Welcome back to Empower Your Teen. I'm Emma B. Perez. So today we're talking about money, honey. I love this topic, especially for young people. You know, so many young people get to 18, graduation, college, whatever it is, with little to no financial education, which is just so crazy to me because one of the first things we ask them to do, college, is a major financial decision, and they haven't even read loans or anything. So a gap year is a great opportunity to start to provide them some financial education. And this is why I'm so excited to have Holly Reid Toodle here with us today. So let me introduce you. This is Holly. She's an award-winning author, speaker, and certified financial education instructor, dedicated to helping adults and the next generation manage their finances as responsible stewards. She is the founder of the Master Playbook, a financial education and wellness company which has educated thousands of people through speaking engagements, online courses, coaching sessions, and her book, Teach Your Child to Fish: 5 Money Habits Every Child Should Master. As a personal finance advocate, Holly is on a mission to motivate, inspire, and help others break the cycle of paycheck to paycheck living and create a legacy worth leaving. Holly, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, Emma.
Yes. So before we get into the nitty gritty, would you mind sharing with us your story? How is it that you came to be a financial education instructor?
Yeah, absolutely. So it actually started with me working directly with teens. So early in my professional career, I started volunteering with this accounting association where they were looking to really expose high school juniors and seniors to careers in accounting and finance. And so I thought that was such a great idea to kind of feed the pipeline, but I actually signed up to teach a lesson on financial literacy. Like, now you have your first paycheck. Now what do you do? So now these aren't just your any high schoolers. These are scholars in their class, cream of the crop. Again, juniors and seniors getting ready to prepare for college being their next step. And so they're in this phase of life, like you mentioned, where they're getting ready to make really two of the biggest financial decisions of their lives. These decisions are initially going to determine their financial starting point, and that's where they plan to go to school and what career they think they want to pursue. So these kids were really struggling to tell me some basic financial information. And just to give you an example, like they could barely articulate to me the difference between a credit card and a debit card. And I was just in awe. And so that experience, coupled with my own personal financial breakthrough or aha moments, really gave me the insight that there was a gap, right? So we're relying on our school systems. Kids really weren't being taught about money management at home. And so here I come. Now I want to try to fill that gap between home and what they may be learning in school, because money management is a life tool. It's something that they're going to use for the rest of their lives. And so a fire kind of was lit under me, and I decided to write a book. And the book was targeting parents, the Teach Your Child to Fish, targeting parents about what we should be teaching our kids about money management before they leave the nest. And, the book was so well received when it was launched that it just propelled me to become, a certified financial educator and to just continue this work where I do, online courses and workshops and things to really help solidify and give parents and teenagers real life examples so that they can start applying it in their everyday lives.
That's so amazing. I'm so glad that you're doing that work because parents want to educate their children about finances, but they really just don't know how to go about doing that. Like, how do you make it age appropriate and things like that?
Right.
So what a great resource to have your book. So I'm
Yes.
so glad that you did that. Okay, so let's talk about this. And I actually want to start with, before we get into, okay, what do we do? How do we go about doing this? I want to actually start with some of the mistakes that people make during, with their kids during this age range, maybe during a gap year, so that we know what those are and we know how we can avoid them.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are really two main mistakes that I see during this time. So one, the very first one is that there are no financial expectations established or set during this gap year. So, this is a year that's supposed to be about personal growth, development, maybe exploration. And I get it. Parents are worn down. They have taught, they are trying to teach their kids everything that they think they need. But again, because money management is so essential, we've got to make this an expectation. So even if your teens are hungry for independence, they still need our guidance during this time. And for me personally, I know I definitely needed my parents while they didn't think I was listening to them. I was actually really listening to them and really trying to looking for their guidance in a lot of things, which my dad gratefully gave me a little bit, but not everything that I needed. So the first mistake is you have to set some expectations around finances, around money. So will your child work during this gap year? If they are going to work, my advice is to set the expectation about what you expect them to do with that money. How do you expect them to manage that money? Is it okay for them to just blow it all? Or do you want to make them save some of the money that they're earning for their first semester when they decide to enroll? Or do you want them to save that money for the car they're probably asking you for? If during this gap year, I say make them pay rent. You don't have to make them pay, real world rent, but if they're staying with you, if they're still living in the household, why not make them pay a small portion of rent or take on some responsibility like paying for their personal cell phone bill or whatever the case may be. Now, if your child isn't going to work during this time because they're going to be doing other things, like what are your expectations around the money that you give to them or the money that you provide to them? Is there a limit? How are you going to hold them accountable so that they are managing the money wisely and being really thoughtful about the way that they're spending your money? So just setting the expectation is a big one. The second mistake that I see is, again, not allowing your young adult the space to make a mistake, right? So as moms, I know we can be so protective. we want to shield our kids, shield our mini me's so that they don't fall into some of the traps that we may have made financially. But here's the other side of that. Like in failure or in poor decision making, there is a lesson in that failure or in that bad decision. It's a teaching moment. So we have to set the expectation, but we also have to give them that room, that capacity to make their own personal mistakes.
I love that. One of the things that I teach is that when we make mistakes, there's an electrochemical reaction in our brains that doesn't happen when we don't make mistakes. And
Yeah,
so what this does is it actually grows your brain. So when you're not making mistakes, your brain's not growing, actually.
right.
So, and I know that it can sound scary to think about someone making mistakes with their money, oh no, but a gap year is really kind of a great buffer time. It's a safe place to make some mistakes on a smaller scale than
Absolutely.
it would be on
I
a
was
bigger.
I was gonna say the same thing. Like this gap year, they still have you as a safety net. We're not talking about, 20, $30,000 mistakes. We don't want them making those mistakes now. But if they make, $100 mistake now, or just learning what it feels like to wait or to be patient, or that delayed gratification on not being able to purchase something immediately, all of those lessons are, like you said, going to give them that growth, that maturity that they need. So when they are out on their own, they can make more mature, well thought out financial decisions.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so they're getting older. They're wanting
Yes.
some more independence. So how do you have these conversations with them?
Yeah, now with this, I actually have three strategies um, on how you can approach this as a parent. Because again, I know a lot of us feel like they aren't listening. I'm just talking to to the wall, but they are listening. Trust me, they are listening. I know this just from my own personal experience, from my parents repeating things over and over again. And sometimes that's what it takes, repetition. So my three strategies on how you can approach this are: one, you've got to make it a part of everyday conversation and activities. They need to see you living it out. So one, make it a part of everyday conversation. You have to tie it to something that they care about. And three, you have to give them some financial tools and resources that they can reference. So it's not, so the message isn't just coming from you. And I'll dive into these a little bit more. So with the first one, the whole making it a part of everyday activities, errands, conversations, they need to see you living it out. They need to know. Now, I know talking about money can be intimidating to some people, especially if you've struggled with it yourself, or you feel like this is something you're still learning yourself. But the truth is, your kids are learning from you anyway. Most of our children, or most of the ways that we learn about money, are from observation, watching other people, mimicking other people's behaviors, and through repetition. So they're going to pick up on, how you spend your money or pay your bills. They are very observant. And so if you haven't been the best with money in the past, this is still a great opportunity for you to be vulnerable with your teens. Like, share your money mistakes. What did you learn from it? Or if you are really good with money, tell them the things that you do that work really well for you. You might even want to share, if, say, there's a big event coming up, and this is something that you're committed to, or organization or a cause that you're really committed to. You want to share why you give your money to this research or to this organization. Like, all of these different things are ways that you can start having money conversations that aren't a lecture, or that aren't maybe always shaming them or telling them something that they did wrong, but ways to have positive conversations about money where you're just sharing information and applying it to how it personally impacts you. So I think the second thing I said was, you have to tie it to something that they care about, right? So what this looks like is, think about any of the milestones at their age. So graduation, maybe getting their first car or their first consistent job. All of these are milestones where they are either receiving money or it costs money, or both, right? So help them set a budget or establish some goals around the things that they care about. And, if they don't care about it, then you don't care about it. If they don't care about, saving their money, then don't you care about it. So you have to, again, attach it to things that they care about, things that that they are going to come to you for help, for advice, just because they've never done it before. And so we want them to really, at this point, put some skin in the game and take some ownership and accountability around the things that they care about, but from a financial perspective. And then the third thing I think I mentioned was, you have to give them tools, some resources that they can reference. So again, the message isn't just coming from you. We know that we can sound like a tape recorder on, rewind, and where it can lose a lot of the meaning or the emphasis. So it's important to introduce them to either videos or books or seminars or online courses, something that's going to be a different voice, maybe even a different perspective, where someone is saying the same thing you're saying, but they're saying it differently because they have a different story or they have a different background. But you gotta be able to give them the message in different ways so that it'll all be received and something's going to sink in.
That's great. I love that. And, you know, something that I've done before, and I would love your opinion on it, is sharing something that maybe I agree with some of it, but not all of it. And
Okay.
having them watching it and saying, now let's discuss it. You know, this is what I
Absolutely.
thought. What do you think? Would you do that?
Absolutely.
No?
Yes. I think that's awesome. Um, One of the things that I teach in my workshops is just about, spending wisely, but also spending consciously, like aligning your spending with your beliefs, your value system, and how important that is. And so then we go through a series of articles or news clips or stories about, big companies or big executives who may have made a moral mistake or a moral decision, or a decision that may not sit well with all of their customers, and then just having that conversation about, well, what do you think? Well, would you want your money, would you still want to support that company or that
Mhm.
business based off of what you know about them today?
Yeah.
And so just having those conversations so that they can tie in how their money really impacts the world and impacts the community, because it does.
Absolutely. Okay, so for families out there who are planning a gap year with their child, what are you were talking about expectations, have some expectations this year for them to learn about money. Do you have any recommendations for what those expectations could be, or certain ways that they can, go about learning more about finances in this year?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one, that's where the resource guide is going to come into play, which should be really helpful. But again, with those expectations, if you expect your teen to work during this time, the perfect time now is to talk to them about these expectations are now. And I'll give you an example. So, there was a summer during my college experience where I went and lived and worked in Chicago. And so I spent the whole summer in Chicago, came back home to Atlanta. That's where I'm from. And my mom said, "So, how much money did you save? Like, how much are you going to be able to contribute to your books?" And I was like, "Huh? Save money?" So that was an expectation that was communicated to me too late in the process. I
Yeah.
blew that money. I spent that money however I wanted to enjoy Chicago. And so it's really important that if they are working, if they are earning money, that you have a conversation in advance of how you expect them to manage that money. Do you expect them to save a certain portion?
Mhm.
What do you expect them to save it for? Or at least give them the assignment and say, how will you spend your money? Like, give them that push to think a little ahead of the times before the end of the summer. What do you want to accomplish? How much do you want to save? And so that's one of the big ones that I've seen. I get a lot of complaints from parents of teenagers where they're like, "Oh, my son, works during the summer, but he just blows it on gaming, or he blows it on tennis shoes, or whatever the case may be." And I'm like, "Well, what expectation did you set?" So there has to be, you have to have those conversations. And this is really important, Emma, because it's one thing to just tell our kids one thing, right? It's one thing to give our kids great advice. I got a lot of great advice. Um, well, I won't say that. I got a lot of what my parents did. They told me a lot of what not to do with my money. Don't spend it all in one place. You don't want to spend your money on that. Where I saw that they didn't tell me what to do with my money. They didn't show me step by step, how to save. They told me to save, but nobody ever showed me how to save or gave me a strategy or a methodology. So it's really important during this gap year that they practice these things. Practicing them now while they, again, have that safety net, while they, have someone who can pick them up if they make a bad decision, is going to be critical. Because the more they practice, the better they'll be when they are out on their own. So I can even give another example. Like my first, when I graduated from high school, I got thousands of dollars in gifts from family and friends who wanted to really celebrate that moment with me. And I didn't have a bank account at age 18. And so my mom took me to open my first savings account at 18. I felt so grown up. I was like, oh, I'm going to have a bank account. She literally, we opened up a savings account. She spent maybe 5 minutes talking me through how to record my withdrawals. That's a key word. She taught me how to record the withdrawals and keep up with the money, but she never taught me how, how much I need to save. And, so I was awful at saving because I absolutely had no practice doing it. And so this gap year is all about practicing those money habits, allowing them to make decisions, giving them the guidance, showing them the way, giving them specific steps. And so that's what the resources is all about. That's what my book does. It gives you specific steps and tactics and strategies that you can implement so that your child can practice it and so that they can master it. So when they, again, are out on their own, it's not such a struggle, and they can really avoid a lot of the financial pitfalls that we may have faced coming, during this time in our lives.
Yes. And what an amazing gift to give them at this age, to give them specific strategies that they can follow, that can help them just in the long run not have to repair too much,
Right.
or not have to repair as much as if they didn't have these strategies, right?
Absolutely.
So you brought a gift for everyone today. Will you tell us about that?
Yes. So it's an online resource. So you can click on the link, download it. And so again, it's just 4 key resources that I thought would be really helpful for teens in this phase where they can get some financial education through different methods. So one is like an online course. There's there's an interactive resource on there just so they can kind of learn the basics, learn how things work, watch some videos that applies it to the real world. But then there's also like a list of some of my favorite apps so that they can start budgeting, saving, investing, even in this gap year, and even with small amounts of money. So just giving them that opportunity and really just trying to empower them and encourage them to start practicing these healthy money habits now. So again, they can build, they'll start off on the right foot financially.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that. That's going to be so big for so many families. We appreciate it. So just as a reminder, the button is right below this video, so you can click on that to get that. Thank you so much, Holly, for being here with us today.
No, thank you. I really appreciate this.
All right, let's talk again soon.
Okay.